Breaking news at this hour. Israel has confirmed an assassination attempt against senior Hamas officials in Doha, Qatar. I'm Lidar Lazi, and we'll get into all that we know at this hour as this breaking story develops. Reports and video show plumes of smoke rising from the Qatar neighborhood in the Qatari capital city. The IDF and Israel Security Agency released a joint statement a short while ago saying they conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization. The statement says that for years, these members of the Hamas leadership have led the terrorist organization's operations and are directly responsible for the brutal October 7th massacre. The IDF and ISA said that prior to the strike, measures were taken in order to mitigate the harm to civilians, including the use of precise munitions and additional intelligence. Right now, we know that there are a number of senior Hamas officials still outstanding in Qatar, Khaled Mashal and Khalil al-Hayya. And reports indicate that Khalil al-Hayya was the main target of the assassination and was indeed taken out, but this is just a preliminary report. This marks a very dramatic escalation. Qatar has condemned the strike. So this is all preliminary, but right now I would like to invite Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and the former IDF spokesperson. He's joining us now by phone. Jonathan, what can you tell us so far? What do we know?
Well, I think it shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, many people are surprised, but I don't think that people should be surprised because the Israeli chief of staff said so in his own voice more than 2 weeks ago that they are on notice. The external leadership of Hamas bear responsibility for everything that Hamas has done and is still trying to do against Israelis. And as such, now has come the time that they are legitimate military target.
Now, what can you tell us about,
so far away?
And what goes into an operation like this? I mean, this is really a remarkable operation.
It is. Obviously, first the requirement is intelligence, live, updated, human-based intelligence with a lot of signals intelligence and visuals. And then you have to make sure that you have the ability to deliver the weapons. Looks like Israel did it with their combat jets and other aircraft. And of course, as the statement said very clearly, you want to hit the intended targets, but you don't want to hit anything else. And I'm sure that Israel was extra careful since it is striking in a sovereign country in Qatar to make sure that it did everything possible to hit the military targets only. And time will tell if Israel was indeed successful in taking out Hamas leadership and minimizing collateral damage.
Mm-hmm. And we do have an update that according to the Israeli news channel 12, the Hebrew news channel 12, saying that U.S. President Donald Trump did indeed give the green light for this operation, and that longtime Hamas leader Khaled Mashal, one of the senior figures, was also one of the targets, and he was at a reported meeting of senior Hamas officials in Doha that was the target of the strike, according to this report. So I do want to ask, Jonathan, we had to assume initially that in such an operation like this, that the United States was at least warned in advance or was part of this operation, gave the green light for this operation. What are the likely ramifications of such a strike going to be?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that there's very little chance that Israel in its current situation would conduct such an important military activity without explicit American approval. And I think that approval was in place. And I think that due warnings had been given to Hamas and to the Qataris by President Trump and his team, by Envoy Witkoff and others. So I think this is along the same blueprint that Israel is operating against Iran and operated against Hezbollah, where we're working hand in hand with the Americans. And that is, of course, very important. I think the ramifications here could be quite interesting. This may lead to a breakthrough in negotiations, and this may be the last kind of push and persuasion that Israel has to do when it comes to Hamas, because for a long time, the external leadership was kind of off limits, and they were not targeted, and they were safe to live a grand life in Qatar and in Turkey. Now Israel is obviously signaling that that time is up, and that Israel has no more patience for the external leadership continuing and extending the war. And I think that this is part of the campaign to get Hamas to surrender, hand over the hostages, and end the war in Gaza on Israel's terms.
Now, you said that this perhaps was an unsurprising strike, but I mean, until now, Qatar, and I want to remind our viewers, Qatar has been playing mediator in the hostage negotiations, all while hosting, while financing Hamas officials for years. And so Qatar has been sort of off limits until now. You know, we're day 704 of the war, nearly 2 years in. Qatar has been off limits, and now Israel has attacked the senior Hamas officials on Qatari soil. So as you said, it sends a clear message that their time is up. But I mean, what do you make of this, that only now is Israel finally going after Hamas leadership on Qatari soil?
Yeah, I mean, it rings familiar to Israel's magnificent military operations against Hezbollah. It took Israel a year to finally, for the political leadership in Israel, to finally make the decision to use the tools that were ready against the Hezbollah's leadership, against Hassan Nasrallah and the Radwan senior command. And that was a successful military operation that de-escalated the Lebanese front. We see now that finally Israel has used tools that I'm sure existed for a long period of time. The intelligence and the Air Force capacity were there. But now the political decision was made. I ask, just like you, what took Israel so long, and why hasn't Israel brought justice to these terrorists a long time ago? Why was there such a safe haven in Qatar? Why was Qatar allowed to play this role of middleman and have this tremendous influence over the lives of Israelis? And many questions about Israeli relationships with Qatar, including at the political level. Maybe that's part of the answer. But the bottom line currently is a good one. This is military action that is long overdue. And I hope that the Hamas leaders in Egypt and in Turkey are taking notice and understanding that Israel has now changed the rules of the game, and that we want to get the desired outcome. We want to get our hostages back, win the war, and get security for Israelis and a better situation in the
Do you think that this sends a clear message as well to the governments of Turkey, to the governments of Egypt? You know, we struck against Qatar. We can just as easily strike Hamas targets in your countries, and we're not afraid to do so.
I don't think that's the message, because we're talking about totally different military capabilities. Qatar is a powerful country in terms of its tremendous fantastic wealth and the soft power that it has accumulated, that it has bought in the West. It has bought influence in the US, in Europe, through basically bribing its way. It has a powerful media arm, Al Jazeera, but in terms of hard power, military, they are exposed. That is not the case with neither Turkey nor Egypt, and I wouldn't draw a comparison between them. These are powerful countries militarily wise, with significant military capabilities, and I don't think that Israel would address terrorists in those countries in the same way that Israel has now addressed terrorists in Doha and Qatar. It's quote unquote, or it's feasible to strike in Qatar because Qatar has very limited military capabilities to respond with, and Qatar has already been indirectly in war with Israel and funding and aiding and abetting our enemies. So it's not as if Israel is opening up a front with Qatar. Israel is merely responding to Qatari aggression and subversion and terror supporting that we have been facing for the last 15, 20 years.
So does this mean that we can expect to see a very limited response from Qatar to this strike on its soil? Or could we perhaps see Qatar calling up on its allies, the Islamic Republic of Iran, to issue some kind of response to these strikes?
At this stage, I think that would be erroneous of the Qataris to try to respond militarily. I don't think Qatar has any significant tools to attack Israel with. is, again, Qatar is a powerful country in terms of money and regional and global influence, but in terms of military might, they are quite small and quite insignificant and definitely not a match for Israel. Qatar can make life difficult for Israel, and they can continue to support terrorists and support and subvert and be mouthpieces for terrorist organizations, which they have been for a long time. So that wouldn't be new. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that Qatar has a lot of viable options on the table that they can use against Israel, which goes in the world of kinetic use of force, of hard power, and not soft power.
And of course, especially since we know that the United States also gave the green light for this operation.
Yes, I think that's a key factor. And another factor is the state of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They are dealing with all kinds of challenges, domestic and external. They are not at the height of their power. They don't have electricity or water to supply all of their civilians. And they've been exposed by Israel and the US as being weak and incapable of defending their own territory and assets. So you asked about, whether the Qataris will ask the Iranians for help. They may, but I'm skeptical about Iranian willingness to get involved in another round of fighting with Israel.
Now, I want to ask a little bit as well about the targets of this strike. We know that they were senior Hamas officials, Khaled Mashal, Khalil al-Hayya, and also reports that Zahir Jabarin was also among them. What can you tell our viewers about these Hamas leaders?
So Khaled Mashal, viewers might remember that this is at least the second attempt by Israel to eliminate him. I think the first one was in 1996 by Mossad agents in Jordan. Unfortunately, that wasn't successful. But I think that it appears, according to the information that I have now, official sources or unofficial sources, it looks as if this one was a more successful attempt. And we're talking about senior, very rich terrorists that are part of the external overseas leadership of Hamas. They are the go-betweens between Hamas and various nation states that support Hamas. So they have a very important role in providing Hamas with money and weapons and diplomatic cover. Without this cover and weapons and money, Hamas wouldn't be able to fight against Israel as they have been doing. So these are very important facilitators for Hamas. They have certain influence over decisions that Hamas makes on the ground at the end of the day, but their role was to provide Hamas with the weapons and the money to do the October 7 attack. And over the last 2 years, their role has been to continue to provide political support through Doha, Cairo, and Ankara to Hamas and what Hamas was doing, holding on to our hostages and prolonging the war unnecessarily. That is what they've been busy doing, and they've been getting very rich doing it. I think I've seen intel reports that suggest that there are quite a few billionaires amongst the senior leadership of Hamas. Khaled Mashal amassed significant personal wealth. I don't know how a terrorist does that, but I suppose it's not through saving and investing. And that there are other senior Hamas officials who also grew to quite significant possession. So if indeed the reports are correct, and we have seen 5, 6, or 7 senior Hamas figures eliminated, that I think is a very substantial move, and it will be a challenge for Hamas for its future leadership, and it will be another blow for the organization, for its prestige, and for its ability to build coalitions and to exist.
Absolutely. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights at this hour.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for those of you just tuning in, we have breaking news at this hour. Israel has confirmed an assassination attempt against senior Hamas officials in Doha, Qatar. So we'll get into all that we know at this hour. This is a breaking story and it's a developing story. So far, we have reports and video showing plumes of smoke rising from the Qatar neighborhood in Doha, the Qatari capital city. The IDF and Israel Security Agency released a joint statement saying that they conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization. The statement says that for years, these members of the Hamas leadership have led the terrorist organization's operations and are directly responsible for the October 7th massacre. The joint statement also said that prior to the strike, measures were taken in order to mitigate the harm to civilians, including the use of precise munitions and additional intelligence. Now, right now, we know that there are a number of senior Hamas officials in Qatar, among them Khaled Mashal and Khalil al-Hayya. And as we just heard from Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, Khaled Mashal has been the target of previous Israeli assassination attempts. And reports, so far, preliminary reports, indicate that Khalil al-Hayya was indeed taken out in this assassination, and we are now awaiting to hear the fate of the other Hamas leaders in Doha, Qatar. And this marks a very dramatic escalation, 704 days into the war with Gaza, with Hamas. Qatar has, of course, condemned the strike. So this is all very preliminary, and I want to see if we have our guest. I'm told that we don't have another guest, so we're also hearing reports at this hour. We'll see if we can get him to connect in a moment. But we are also hearing reports at this hour, according to Israeli Hebrew news site Channel 12, we're hearing reports that the United States was aware and gave the green light, that U.S. President Donald Trump gave the green light for this strike in Qatar against Hamas senior leadership. And we are being told that Khaled Mashal was also one of the targets, and that there was a meeting of senior Hamas officials who were the targets of this strike. So we are waiting to see, and it will likely take quite some time before we have confirmation of the success of this strike, whether or not Israel was indeed able to take out these senior Hamas officials. And so at this hour, and what we're seeing here now on the screen are eyewitness reports, videos taken of the plumes of smoke. This is from Doha, Qatar, and we can see really plumes of smoke. There are reports that there were as many as 10 explosions in the capital city of Qatar. This certainly has come as a shock to Qataris. And I want to take a moment to remind our viewers that Qatar has been playing mediator since the October 7th massacre, a mediator to the negotiations for hostage release and for ceasefire. But all the while, Qatar has been hosting and financing Hamas senior officials for years. But until now, Qatar has been off limits. The senior Hamas officials residing in Qatar believed that they had immunity, that they were protected by being on Qatari soil. And Israel today proving that this is not the case, sending a very clear message to the remaining Hamas leadership that they are viable targets, according to Israel. And so we're waiting to see now if we have another guest joining us. And I see that we don't, so I just want to give again a quick recap. We're seeing on the screen now the explosions in Qatar, in the capital city. These explosions happened a short while ago. Israel was very quick this time to issue a statement saying and claim responsibility for the strikes, clarifying that this was an attack against the senior Hamas leadership being hosted in Qatar and not, of course, against Qatar in any way or Qatari civilians, and clarifying that it took a series of measures to prevent any harm to civilians. And so this is a developing story, and of course we will continue to update with all of the latest breaking news as it comes in. We know that it will likely take several hours, if not days, until we have official confirmation of the targets of the strike. But among the reported leadership being targeted was longtime Hamas leader Khaled Mashal and Zahir Jabarin and Khalil al-Hayya. Those are the names that you will likely be hearing in the next couple of days as Israel awaits confirmation that it was indeed successful in targeting these senior Hamas leaders. And so we will continue to update with the latest news and the latest updates coming out of Israel and the Middle East. This is indeed a dramatic event, a dramatic breaking news story, and we will continue to update. And so that is all the time that we have at this hour. Stay with ILTV. Continue to follow our social networks for all of the latest updates on this breaking news story: Israeli assassination of Qatari officials of Hamas officials in Qatar. I'm Ladar Lazi. Thank you so much for watching.